Nick Shirley spoke about. But Tim Walz, man.
Major breaking political news out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tim Walz will not seek re-election as governor, and what a fall from grace this has been for him. You might recall in the spring of 2023, he pushed through several progressive ideas to the state legislature that caught the attention of Barack Obama, who went to Twitter to give his endorsement for the programs, which eventually caught the attention of people like Kamala Harris, who chose him to be her running mate as the vice president. Introduced in Chicago at the convention in August of last year, a debate that was an absolute disaster with J.D. Vance. At one point called himself a knucklehead, but after reportedly billions of dollars have been stolen from taxpayers by way of the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz says he will not seek a third term. What a remarkable 2 years in the national spotlight has been for him, Dana.
And Walz hit Trump in his announcement. He said Donald Trump and his allies in Washington, in St. Paul, and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in America to raise a family. Now, okay, what else has been happening in this last month? Well, you have the discovery that there has been incredible amounts of fraud, and I think 98% of the people arrested are Somalis who are...
Okay, so let's get into this real quick. I truly believe that the reason why he's stepping down, and I've heard some other commentary on it by some other reaction people, but when I look at what's taking place, I do believe that's true. It is an establishment play, because if you don't have the backing of the Democratic Party, the DNC, you're not going to go too far. You're not going to go too far at all. I mean, they're dress right dress, especially if you're talking about what's taking place in New York with Madani. It's not a good look on the party right now. Not at all. There's nothing about it that's a good look on the party. Nothing at all. So for that reason, Tim Walz has to step down. Tim Walz has to take that position and step down. Check this out. Look, I'm running this other one on the other side. I'm learning this. I'm learning how to do it. But yeah, Tim Walz has to step down. You remember that show that was called The Good Wife? There was a show that was on CNBC, and it would actually, no, not even A Good Wife. Remember House of Thrones, House of Cards? That was on Netflix. It's still on Netflix. If you've never seen House of Cards on Netflix, go check it out. Because I keep saying House of Cards on Netflix is one of those things that really, truly depicts the back end to some of these political parties. So think about it. If you don't have the backing of your party, you cannot run for a position, okay? And you can't maintain position. Eric Adams experienced that same thing. That's why he had to jump ship and go over to the Trump side, okay? So you have to be in line with the party. And right now, the party is completely left. It's full of left young people that want free shit and don't create anything. That's really what it is. And Tim Walz, who was the oldest white man that I've seen in the Democratic Party that tried to actually be young. Like, he just actually tries to be that young grandpa. What do you call him? America's father, Man, this is the game. Once you're in this political move, you get what you get. And he opened himself wide open running for presidency. I think it's for VP, it's that aspiration, that desire, that, man, I got to make, it's always ambition. That ambition can kill you. And that's, in my position, if Tim Walz never ran for that position, he never ran for it, VP, Tim Walz will probably be doing pretty good right now. Tim Walz wouldn't have an issue. Nobody would be looking at Tim Walz. Yeah, Trump would be out there looking at whatever, but I don't know. And maybe Tim knew that Minnesota had so much fraud in it that he said, hey, I got to run It's either win or bust, because they might come after me if I'm not in that position and I lose. Okay. But then again, I say if the Democrats had won for some sheer reason, then would they have shielded him? They probably would have. It probably wouldn't be as deep as it is right now. It probably wouldn't be. But if CNN could actually make this go away, they would. But they can't.
Are immigrants there in the state that were taking COVID funds and basically and Medicaid funds and stealing them from the American people under his watch or his lack of watch. And now remember, Kamala Harris chooses him as the vice presidential choice partly because he couldn't conceivably upstage her. She says in her book that she didn't want to go with Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who because he was Jewish. She actually says this, okay? And then she goes with Tim Walz, and he was a disaster from beginning to end. He also has a lot of confidence in himself, but I think that it was very clear to him after he had some discussions over the weekend that he would lose. He was a drag on the Democratic Party nationally, and the best thing that he could have done for the party, actually, and probably for him and his family, is to take this action today, which is to decide not to run for re-election.
So the initial reporting suggests $1 billion has been stolen. Since then, that number's gone higher.
It's higher.
How high, we don't know where it ends. And there are suggestions that it could be similar in other states. Mary Catherine Ham.
He's got to be complacent. Like, he knows already that they're going to keep coming. They're not going to stop. And I guess his options when it comes to running for re-election would be non-existent. See, I low-key feel just like in New York, they're going to slowly try to move in these Mandani-like candidates. Okay, candidates. Let's try to say that 10 times. Mandani-like candidates into that position. And why is that important? For them, they have to now begin to shape the narrative, not just of what young people are saying in New York, but this is the voice of young people all around the country. And affordability is a big thing. And the communist socialists are here to help you. That's the narrative I believe that they're going to begin to slowly shape. They're doing it in Seattle. New York just gave them a big stronghold. That's really what it did. I mean, the stronghold there's always going to be a stronghold when you're talking about advocating for free. And who's going to fight you? Who's going to fight you? It's easier to talk about that. So I think whoever's going to take his place that they're going to back going into that new election in Minnesota is going to be as far-leaning left as the New York mayor is.
Joins us now with an initial reaction. MK, good morning to you. What do you think? Tim Walz?
Well, I was reliably told that he was a great fraud fighter and that in fact the fraud was minimal or not happening. So I'm confused about how it suddenly became a fatal blow to his campaign. And I'm actually not confused because the fact is that the numbers were gigantic. This is perhaps unprecedented amounts of fraud. And he does have to answer for it because he was on watch the entire time. And I think it's unlikely given the scale that anyone who had power in the Democratic Party at this time, of which the Somali community that was engaged in this is a core constituency, didn't know about it or at least turn a very blind eye to it. And man, the fall from VP candidate to this is quite spectacular.
You have to wonder what the Minnesota Democrats are thinking, and they might be thinking this. It's reported that he met with Senator Amy Klobuchar over the weekend. And Senator Klobuchar has been trying from Washington, saying back home, you've got to get a handle on all of this. She is considering a run for governor. Perhaps they met and she let him know that he would lose in a primary to her.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think she would be a better choice than Tim Walz. She seems like the kind of person who wouldn't put up with this. But again, I would say anyone who was in power in the state of Minnesota had to know that some of this was going on. Whistleblowers were being very upfront about it.
So he definitely knew. Without a shadow of a doubt, this man knew. He knew. He had some idea, some concept. They're coming for every single person that, and this is what I believe, I can clearly see the writing on the wall. Every single person that had some participation in ignoring this level of fraud, being complacent to it, being a part of it, it does it in any way, shape, or form, they're coming for them. So that means Ilhan Omar will definitely guess what? Ilhan Omar is in the line of sight right now, and she knows it because she is the next one who is going to
folks,
be.
as you see from the
She's the next one they're digging into.
Times reporting it elsewhere, said basically the 2020 mind virus kept us from pointing out that this was happening because we were afraid because it was happening in marginalized communities, we couldn't stop them without being called racist. That is a total abdication of duty. And she's a senator from that state, so she had duties as well. So although she strikes me as a tough lady who can talk tough about this, there was stuff going on while she was on the watch as well.
Mary Catherine, there's reports that Somali Americans number about 100,000 in Minnesota. And it's our understanding that you can't win a statewide race unless you have their vote. And you just mentioned the accusation of racism. And that's pretty much what the message was out of Minnesota. Anybody who was pointing fingers at what was going on there, you were accused of being a racist. Well, now that cover has been blown.
See, and that's the thing. When African Americans, well, you don't understand this. Whenever you use that word racism, or somebody is racist, you got to know that it's racist. You can't, when I say racism, you've got to know that person did this specifically, because now it becomes the boy who cried wolf. Okay?
Oh no.
If you don't know the story, the boy who cried wolf, if you totally forgot it, rehash it. The boy cries wolf, and there's no wolf, but he wants the attention. And in this case, you have these people that use wolf as a shield. Okay? I mean, that's the best way to put it. You cry wolf, oh, let's leave them alone. And they left them alone. From, 2018, 2019, 2020, it blew up. Of course, we know already, going back, I believe, to Obama's era, or even starting with George Bush, they brought in a huge amount of Somalians into the United States. I think during Bush's era, it was somewhere around some crazy 25,000, 50,000, probably 100,000 Somalians into it. Just collectively, we're not talking about Somalians just going to Minnesota, spread throughout the whole country. So over that course of time, that's been a voting base for Barack Obama, definitely Kamala. We knew that. Biden definitely had a voting base there. So when you see something like this, you kind of got to scratch your head and wonder, how is it that these guys got away with this for such a long period of time? How is it? It's got to be the leadership, and he knows it. And Ilhan is next. They coming for you, Illy.
Right, and some, in fact, who were accused of things either threatened to sue or sued, saying, hey, we're being discriminated against because you're noticing the fraud. But the numbers don't lie, and the numbers aren't racist, and the stats matter, and every single dollar that is not stewarded by those...
You can't cry racism and there's no racism. You have to know that this is a racist issue. You can't. Because when you do that, when real racist issues pop up, and they do pop up, you have no power. You have no leverage. And right now, this is the thing. You can cry on TikTok, and I'm going to cover that too, because I've got some commentary. I've listened to some of you guys on TikTok. You can go on TikTok and cry as much as you want and say that they're coming for brown people. They're coming for African Americans. They're coming for them. You can do it as much as you want. It's becoming numb. Like is desensitized. Okay. Desensitization can actually now play against us in situations where we truly actually do need it. Because there are people who are racist motherfuckers out here. There are. And they don't care. Even people can say it. Now, I don't believe in the systematic racism portion right there, but when you take people like that and you put them in certain positions, and then it's their mentality and their ideology, it's not a systemized system that's set up. Their ideology and their mentality now keeps you out of the flow of those things, out of those job positions, out of those different positions, because you have those clusters who build other relationships with people that are like-minded. Now you say it's systematic, and you see it as being systematic, but these people may not even like each other. But when you cry wolf, you take away all the power from the word racism. You take away it from it. And so it's easy for people to say there's no such thing as racism, which I've heard Candace Owens say and make those statements before, which I totally disagree. Now, is there a plot to systematically? No. If anything, as we as Black people, African Americans, minorities, people, we get into a certain position, we learn certain things and we keep it to ourselves. You got Tyler Perry. Now, this is another rant. I'm going all the way down there. I'm not going to go too far off the topic. But let's go back to this, and I'll talk about that because I do believe that a lot of the economic ignorance would have been dealt with a long time ago if there was truly a community amongst African Americans which taught each other from the wealthiest on down. But the wealthiest get the secrets, and they keep it, and they give it to you in books for you to buy, but it's still not the nitty-gritty. It's not the true.
Who are in charge of these programs is stolen from another Minnesota or federal taxpayer who could have used that dollar for honest means and for something productive instead of fraud. So it's really a catastrophe to have that taken from people who are already struggling, maybe to, I don't know, pay for childcare, and it's going to non-existent childcare.
Also, I mean, it is difficult for any politician. Look, there's a reason I don't run. I don't have the stomach for it. But when you become a national laughingstock, and every meme is about you because you were chosen because you're going to show the Democratic Party that you were the masculine part of the party. There's all of that. But there's one thing deeper on the fraud that I want to point out. Keith Ellison, former...
I don't know, some of y'all bored it, but I never could buy the fact that he was the masculine part of the Democratic Party. I wasn't buying it, dude. I wasn't buying it at all. I just couldn't buy it.
Congressman is now the Attorney General of Minnesota. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but it's been a couple of weeks, so let me just bring it back up. And 10-Minute Drill, the podcast, has a lot more on this. He is on audio tape, leaked audio, personally promising fraudsters that he would pressure the government to continue funding the fraudulent enterprises and promise to shield them from investigation. So the apple is rotten all the way through and into the core.
Whoa,
and so
whoa,
do Republicans have a chance?
Run that back.
Are you saying audio, personally promising fraudsters that he would pressure the government to continue funding the fraud? One thing deeper on the fraud that I want to point out. Keith Ellison, former congressman, is now the Attorney General of Minnesota. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but it's been a couple of weeks, so let me just bring it back up. And 10-Minute Drill, the podcast, has a lot more on this. He is on audio tape, leaked audio, personally promising fraudsters that he would pressure the government to continue funding the fraudulent enterprises and promise to shield them from investigation.
See, they coming for all of y'all. The Attorney General of Minnesota said that, and they got him on leaked. They got him on leaked audio actually even saying that. That's terrible. That's horrible. So that means everything going from the governor down to the Attorney General. I mean, damn, we're going to look definitely rotten. We definitely know. I already told you, they're coming for all of them. Every last one that did not say, hey, I knew about this. I tried to let people know. Here's the written evidence of it. You're in line of sight. Like, you're in line.
So the apple is rotten all the way through and into the core. And so do Republicans have a chance? I'm just saying, are you saying there's a chance that Minnesota could finally maybe turn a corner? It's been a difficult one for Republicans for many, many election cycles.
Look, I think even in a blue and purple state, even a very blue state, when you get to this level of abuse of the taxpayer, yes, Republicans can have a moment if they seize it. Ellison is a great example of exactly what you say, Dana, that people had to have known about this while it was happening. And in fact, he was talking to the very people doing it and making promises to them. So that can change voters' minds about where they're willing to swing. Republicans, however, have to put up a person against, whether it's Klobuchar or whomever, who can fight that fight. Lisa DeMuth, I believe, is the head of the Republicans in the House in the state who had declared a long time ago. And then Mike Lindell, I think, is prepared to get in the race or is poised or has announced such. So you have to be careful about who you pick on your side as well to make this competitive.
MK, I'm sure you follow this video over the holidays, this father-son team, McShipley. They were showing up at these daycare centers where there were no kids. And a lot of folks in the media went after them for their reporting, as opposed to asking their own questions as to why you're receiving millions of dollars and had no children to show for it. Last comment on this.
And that's that's what they did, and that's what they're doing also with Trump, with Venezuela. It's going after the story instead of trying to. And I would respect CNN a whole lot more if CNN actually went after the facts. Like if they actually went after it and said, okay, we found that this is true. We've got 3 out of 10. We've got 5 out of 10. It's not true for all of them, but it's true for this based on our investigative reporting. I would feel a little bit different. But I've lost all respect for mainstream media. I barely hold on respect for Fox, honestly. I mean, I like News Nation, some of these other ones that are not so mainstream, simply because when they get these walking points, nobody sits back and says, hey, does this actually make sense? Nobody actually says it. Nobody says it. They don't say, I don't think we shouldn't be doing this. We probably need to go back and to win the respect of the people listening to us by giving them some really good commentary, and then also some doing some really true, significant investigative reporting. But they don't do that. They just go and attack whatever the narrative is, even if there's truth, even if the narrative isn't true. Even if what's coming out is true, they still don't even recognize the truth in the narrative at all. They don't. And I think it's been years and years of conditioning and training, years and years of training that makes them think like this. You got to realize the mainstream media programmed a lot of the country with propaganda for decades. I don't know if you get a chance, go check out that show Mad Men. Remember, I don't know if you ever get a chance to check it out. It's on AMC, Mad Men. Sometimes it can be boring. When you check it out, you got to just be in the mood for it, because it's literally the 1950s they're playing characters of, but they're in an advertising firm, and the way that they sell things like cigars and cigarettes and shampoo, it was intentionally programming the minds of the people, intentionally programming the mind. So they don't view cigarettes as being as harmful. It's less harmful than crack cocaine or something they will contrast it to, you know? So from the media aspect of advertising all the way to the news propaganda machine, which over time has changed, they knew and they understood, and the CIA and FBI, some of these other, I'm sure, covert. And you're like, Leon, why are you calling them? Why are you even saying that? If you're so like you love your country, I love my country, and I do recognize that in order to stay in a place where our United States is still a superpower, there are certain sacrifices that need to be made. Now the question is, how far do you go with that? That's when we, where we meet in certain places. But if you look at the way they were programming just through advertising to people, then they turned around and moved into media and programmed, and that's what has been programming of the people, programming of certain narratives. Certain things trend on TikTok, on YouTube. Other things that you think would trend or should trend don't necessarily trend. Now, those other topics may be as polarizing and as important as some of these things, but still, even in the midst of me doing a reaction video to this, we're still talking about what's trending on mainstream media. And they chose that out of 5 or 6 other stories that came out that day. So they can change and try to direct the narrative in different ways. And it's just recently, since now have YouTubers, podcasters gained so much traction amongst the people, that we see now you'll get a Nick Shirley and someone popping up there with a camera and filming everything that's taking place, and they've got to attack that narrative. They've got to attack the credibility. They've got to say, hey, he wasn't in that place. So we can't think for 1 second that the true story of all of this just comes out because they put it out there. Okay. And it will take people, and I think this is the thing that makes them the most afraid. It will take people, and it's going to take people having these conversations, boots on the ground, about what's taking place. So they can, the ones who can go out there, because that's what you got to do. You got to go out there and actually show up there and actually pull on the doors and actually look at it. When I looked at it and I saw Nick Shirley talk, it was one particular one. This guy was actually arguing about whether or not, he said that the kids or his clients don't typically come in until 5, 6 in the evening up until 10. What he's saying is he runs a night care daycare facility, which I can understand in certain metropolitan areas. That's a big thing. That's a very big thing. But does that account for all of the slip ups? No, I don't think so. I don't believe you can only have but so many night cares facilities taking care of kids because the parents got to work in the evening. You only can have but so many of them. Okay, not everybody can be that. Not everybody. But that was his argument when I think CNN showed up and he tried to let them know, hey, yes, this is legit. So I don't believe in a city as big as Minnesota that people were reporting this and it fell on completely deaf ears. Some people who had the power to change it just totally ignored it.
Glad it went viral because it brings attention to something that deserves attention. Local reporters had worked on this in the past. Investigators in the Republican Party and elsewhere had worked on this in the past, but it really caught fire, and it should, so that a lot of people know this is happening. And this is a sort of a reflection back on Kamala actually went after in her government capacity in California, a guy who blew the whistle on Planned Parenthood with similar kinds of videos and reporting as an independent journalist. They don't like that stuff when it turns against their party and the people who are bringing in money for them.
All right. Well, Mary Catherine Ham off to a roaring start in 2026. Thank you for joining us on this breaking news as Tim Walz